Hi Kashif, how are you?
Good morning. How are you? Good morning from New York.
Good morning, good to see you.
You too, you too. It's an amazing show
Um,
so far.
Everything's going very well, and we can't wait to hear what you have to tell us. So, if you can just start and tell us about your journey, the milestones that created the values and purpose that you hold today.
Yeah, sure. I think as many people today on this show have had a similar journey to peace, but peace can be defined in so many ways. But mine personally started actually in Uganda through my mother. She was born in Uganda, grew up in Uganda, and unfortunately faced a lot of issues with Idi Amin. And that was the inspiration for me to do what I'm doing today. And for her to come over to the UK and actually, you know, promote me, inspire me, give me the humble beginnings that were able to allow me to have a platform where I am today to become one of the few South Asian British footballers. And that's really the inspiration behind me. Is there's always an inspiration behind a story, and that was the beginning of my journey, and that enabled me to become a free thinking individual who is really trying to think forward and how we can use sport as a diplomatic tool to try and engage people, raise awareness issues around both the environmental societal issues. And I just feel that if you look at soccer and also American football, football in all of its forms is such a powerful tool. I think soccer itself is now touching 5 billion people globally. The last World Cup in Qatar, which was amazing. And American football on one day alone touches 260 million people. So it just shows you the power of football. And those values I take with me everywhere I go. And it's given me an opportunity to try and socialize and try and unlock the power of football globally.
This is amazing. I mean, with your work, do you feel like we are in the final phase of eliminating racial discrimination, or we have like a very, very long way to go? Where do we stand, in your opinion?
So I think racial discrimination, it's a societal issue. Sports is doing what it can do, but there's so many layers to that question, and there is no million-dollar answer to that question. People are different. People have different experiences. Um, Personally, I feel that there is always a long way to go. It's a journey, right? But we have hope, and I think you see some amazing initiatives globally as well. Organizations trying to do what they are doing, but I would be very optimistic if I was saying that we're in the final phases, because clearly we're not. You see around the world what is happening today. We're in global tragedies all over the world. You look at Pakistan, you look at the issues, in Europe itself as well, and obviously Africa. So I think we've got a long way to go, but I think that's where we feel sports diplomacy can make a huge contribution.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, football, they have a huge influence. But do you think that the organizations that are connected to football and to sports, like FIFA, do you think they're doing enough in promoting action towards a world free of racism? And if so, how are they doing it?
So I think FIFA have got a huge platform. Obviously, you see it from the World Cup and what's happened, and the power of what FIFA hold. But I think it's not only FIFA's responsibility. You look at the IOC, you look at football federations. FIFA as a governing body can obviously promote and push, and with a new campaign, Football Unites, etc. There's a lot that FIFA can do and probably do more. But everyone can do more. But I feel like it's really got to get down to the grassroots. The football federations in each country, the member associations hold the power. I think that's where we basically have to try and engage better and educate, and also start at a very early age. I think that's where the issues start from, right? It's nature versus nurture. So I think that's where sports can be that tool in creating neutral environments for people to come together from, different walks of life, different races, faiths, cultures, tribes. And I think that is the key. But it's partnerships, right? It's back to the UN SDG. So goal 17, this is about working in partnership.
Well, I can't agree more with what you just said. So, young age and partnership, I think these are key. But have you seen any constructive action that has inspired you to fight for justice, equality, and diversity in a world free of racism?
So many. You look at the issues in the American football and Colin Kaepernick and what he was able to do and really take a stand for what he believed in at a time where, he started taking the one knee, whether that was, controversial at the time, controversial now. You look at the Black Lives Matter movement, which is obviously, moved. So it's just, there's so many different athletes and individuals. You look at Malala and what she stood for girls' education. So these people taking a stand, which is constructive. They're pushing equality, diversity, inclusion. But again, one person taking a stand is that ripple moment and movement, which obviously starts these kind of waves. So I feel like if there's more of them, and if we can get back to grassroots, and if we can be collectively using the power of fans globally, worldwide, how can we actually engage in this in trying to find a world free of racism? So I think that's where I really feel that the passion of what sports can do is really unite these kind of the fight against equality, diversity, inclusion.
And can you tell us, I mean, we're here and you're head of Football for Peace, and can you tell us a little bit about what does it mean, how did it all come about, what do you represent, and also how can people support the work that you do?
Yeah, so look, again, very fortunate to be here in New York at the United Nations. Tomorrow is World Water Day. Today is the International Day of Racism as well. So I think this whole with Football for Peace movement actually was born out of the United Nations initially. So Kofi Annan, the late Kofi Annan, incredible individual when he set up the Sport for Development Peace initiative at the United Nations, very forward thinking. It was the first of its kind. It was Dr. Jibril Diallo, who was working at the UN office with Elias Figueroa, who's a FIFA legend. So this initiative was born here, but also from the heritage of South America. Elias is a FIFA legend. He is actually FIFA's 100 greatest players of all time. He started the initiative in South America. He would host peace matches. And what was close to his heart was poverty. So at that time, he was hosting peace matches where he would galvanize the likes of the late Pele, Maradona, Ronaldinho, some very, very high-profile footballers from South America that would come and engage and play in a game of football. And this would raise awareness and aid for those in need around poverty as a goal. And I heard about the concept in 2013, and I was just inspired, and I reached out to Prince Albert of Monaco through this peace and sport movement, and he supported us to actually announce this initiative. And I was really inspired at that time, as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, from my mother's journey. So my inspiration was really around coming back to the conversation of racism and equality and diversity, on actually how can my mother, as a refugee from the UK, take a stand and give me the platform she has today. How can I take this to the next stage? How can I globalize this initiative? And that's how this was born. And then in 2013, we basically launched it in Dubai, and Malala was part of the initiative as well. Maradona blessed it, and we took the initiative to be where we are today. And we now look at, 10 years later, since it came from South America to the UK now globally, and to be here with you, we have today become a sports diplomacy NGO, which is working on actually advancing a new era of sports diplomacy. And we have three main pillars, which is prosperity, societal change, and now also water. And we believe that if you're combining all of these, that's when you're really going to get, a real impact of not only raising awareness but resource, but also impact towards these pressing issues that we face as a community today.
We talked about the young generation and influencing people from young age. What will you say the children now and teenagers that are watching, where should they start and what should they do to help on this cause?
So interesting you say that, because today, actually, as we speak, we have a Football for Peace Centre set up in Bradford, which is in partnership with World Cup winner Mesut Ozil, who has also stood up for human rights and racial discrimination. Obviously very famous. He won a World Cup. He was captain of Arsenal, had a lot of issues with for what he stood up for and what he believed in. And our centre today in Bradford is upskilling and engaging most valuable young players and getting them to understand what they can do to become champions within their own communities. And these children are learning actions of good deeds. And every month, these children go out and do something for the community. Whether that's around societal issues, what we're discussing today, whether it's environmental issues. And these young children are becoming champions in their own right and most valuable players. And for us, the message is that we want to take this movement across the world with footballers plus young youth to become most valuable players. And anyone watching, anyone engaging with us today, we would love to work with you, join the movement, become a most valuable player for your own community and make that ripple effect, as I mentioned earlier. And obviously, we've been working with Peace One Day for many years, and this is something that we really want to push forward for the incredible work that Peace One Day does throughout the year. And I think me being here today at the UN and what Jeremy's doing on the ground, I think there's a huge space for us to contribute in opening the mindsets and making these children free thinkers and game changers within their own environment.
As an ex-footballer yourself, I mean, have you ever experienced racism?
So when I joined Northampton Football Club when I came from the US, unfortunately, and it's a really interesting story because British football historically has faced a lot of issues around racism. And when I was playing in the UK growing up, being a South Asian, it was very difficult for me to break through some of the stereotypical issues that the UK football was facing. My mother, in fact, also faced issues. So that whole journey became so difficult for me within the UK, so I broke off out of the system and I came to the US on a scholarship. And what was interesting when you talk about cultural divides, when I came to the US post 9/11, I saw a huge divide on the university campus between young Muslim people and American citizens at the time. And that was because of what happened with 9/11. However, me being a British footballer, having British accent, I was suddenly seen as someone else because of, being from a football community. And what was interesting at the time is that on campus, I was seen as this British soccer player. However, outside of it, people didn't understand my South Asian heritage. They thought I was Hispanic. So the mindset of me playing football in the US, being Hispanic, was seen as a different kind of player, whereas in the UK, I was seen as a South Asian heritage player. So it was almost that I was the same player. However, in the US, I was seen as a South American, so maybe I was more skillful. Versus in the UK, being South Asian, I would have to prove myself. So it's very interesting on how the mindset is working in stereotypical views when you look at racial divides. Separately from that, sorry, I'll just stop there. So if you have any questions on that point.
I wanted to say that it's such an amazing and interesting story, and may we never have this mindset, in the future, because, as we said, people are people, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. But I always try and look at it from a positive because you can only change the mindset. So coming back to my point on facing, when I came back from the USA to the UK, there was players on my team at Northampton Football Club that wouldn't speak to me in the changing room. And that's very difficult for a young player coming through the academy system. Now, for me, because I had faced so many issues in the past and what my mother gave me the cornerstone to be, very, very strong in my purpose, very, very strong mentally. So for me, coming to the USA, breaking through that barrier and then going back to face that, I'm able to deal with it. However, I find it very unfair for a young South Asian footballer coming through, facing these issues in a changing room environment or in an environment where they're not accepted. That can't continue. And coming back to your earlier question of, are we in the phase of eliminating race final phases? I think we're far from it. There's a long way to go. But hopefully the work that Peace One Day does and all of the other amazing people that are speaking today from across the world can make those ripple effects within their own communities. So I think, and of course, with what we're trying to do with Football for Peace. So really excited to continue these conversations, and thank you for providing the platform for people like myself to continue to be advocates globally and also locally.
And on this amazing note, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for your time and for your wise words. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. Brilliant. Good luck for the rest of the day.
Thank you so much. What a lovely way to speak about the importance of anti-racism in manifesting a more just, equal, diverse, and inclusive world. Thank you, Kashif.